Hey, welcome to Sisterhood Speaks podcast. We're so glad you're here. I have one of my favorite people in the world that's going to share some things with you today. It's Kelly Dalgety. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
She is a mother, she's a traveler, she's a fun person. In fact, I love for her to sit behind me at literally anything because she laughs like that all the time, and it's so fun. Because when someone can laugh, I think they have fun all around them and on the inside. So you're going to learn a lot and you're going to laugh a lot today because she's a great woman and has a great story to share with us. And it's a mom story, right?
It is. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about just yourself because you were here before you were a mom.
Yeah, that's funny. Our kids constantly hearing about our stories from before we had them. They feel like it's this other life that we had. And it's true.
Yep.
Although it feels like we've been parents forever. Before that, we obviously had our own story. So
Right.
I moved to the United States when I was 17 and met Scott when I was 20 and got married. And were married for a couple of years before we had kids. And then obviously been raising kids for the last 24 years.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, I was just a high school student, did my last year of high school here in America, and then went to college and studied writing, did professional writing for a software company for a couple of years, and then decided that was enough of that career.
Right. So where was the here before you got here?
So I was born originally in South Africa and then immigrated to Australia when I was 2. So really, all of my formative years were spent growing up in Australia, and that's my country of citizenship. So
Awesome. I hear it's a beautiful place.
it's so beautiful. I'd love to take the kids back. It's Hannah's been. We keep reminding her she doesn't have a whole lot of memories other than that random picture of her and a koala.
Yeah. Have you ever been to New Zealand?
Only the airport.
Okay.
So not
I did not know I wanted to go there so bad until, of course, something on television. And John's like, oh, yeah, it was like Narnia.
Lord of the Rings.
Maybe one of those. And he goes, oh, it's like everything. It's the most dramatic, adventurous. I'm like, now I want to go there too.
It's a
But,
little bit like Canada. I think it's just close enough that a lot of people don't go.
right.
But
Yeah. Yeah,
but
it's just like a
it's
boat ride
very
over,
safe.
right?
I mean, yeah, it's like I think an hour and a half plane ride. I mean,
I,
it's not from Sydney. It's not far, but we didn't holiday there when I was a kid, and so it just hasn't been on our list because anytime we go back to Australia, it's to see family.
well,
So
I always say I've not been everywhere, but it's on my list.
yeah, it's on our list to take the kids to. And now they're getting older. I'm like, oh, maybe we wait a little longer, then they'll pay for themselves to go.
Oh, I like that. At least part of it.
Right?
Help us out. We have done this for a long time. Well, so you've been here for how many years? 20 some years.
Yeah. I think we realized the other day it was just over 30, which is kind of crazy because for a long time I lived half my life on 2 different continents, but now I'm definitely tipping the scale. So
That's right.
America
Well, we're glad
is
you're here.
home.
And really, one reason I wanted to talk to Kelly today, I met her 13 years ago or so, and I, at our church, taught children's church because I used to be a teacher, and I adored her kids. And because they were lively and fun and happy and all the things that you want children to be, uh, but also disciplined and respectful and honoring and all those things. And so, literally, they were like elementary ages when I first
Yeah.
started children's church with them, and just watching them grow up, it has just been such a beautiful journey to see that children can be raised the way God intended them to be raised and not be full of resentment and rebellion. They can just be happy in the house of God and in their house. And so I feel like you've done it really beautifully.
Oh,
And so
thank you.
today, this Sunday, John and I talked about exceptional families. And so I always feel like, just like with the sisterhood conference, I feel like the story could go a little further. And so that's why I wanted you guys to hear from her today, because I feel like the story and the journey on raising children can be shared from people that's done it. If
Yeah.
you hear me say something very much, Rose is always like, well, Mom, you need to say more about this because there's so many girls right now on all these podcasts and these TikToks, and they're sharing all about their facts. And you look at their kids, they're like 2, and you're like, you're a newbie.
What do you know at this
Yes.
point?
For all we know, you're screwing your kids up royally. I want to know that there's proof in the pudding, and there's proof in your pudding. There's proof in your parenting.
Oh, thank you.
So we would love you to share what you've done,
Okay.
some practical things, and maybe that you could help us girls out, and anyone that has little children. There is a way to do it. And God's way shows us clearly how to do it, but you need to be a student of it, a student of God's way and a student of God's girls. And so today, first off, I would like to tell us, in your words, what is the most important ingredient in parenting your children well?
So I think for us, I really wanted to be consistent. I felt like early on, someone told me that happy kids knew what to expect. And
Yeah.
I thought, for me, that's definitely
That's
true.
good.
I thrive on structure.
Yeah.
And so we tried to create that for the kids. We had a routine. We had, obviously there's days you don't have consistent nap times and bedtimes and dinner times, but we tried to have the routine. And then as they got older, we tried to make sure we were always just doing things together consistently, eating together consistently, trying to attend church consistently. And the things that we did with repetition, we felt like worked out pretty well. And the other thing I would say is I tried to be just really upfront with them. I didn't want them to ever wonder, what the expectations were.
Yeah.
No surprise consequences, no surprise.
Right.
Obviously there are days you maybe react instead of respond in the heat of the moment, but for the most part, I just wanted them to know what was required.
Yeah.
And I think we hit that mark. If you go with the 80-20, I think we probably hit that 80% of the time.
Well, and that makes perfect sense because I tell them in the daycare that we started all the time, children love routines and rituals. And so routines, it just makes them feel like, okay, I'm getting ready to take a nap. I ate lunch. I'm going to take a nap.
They're confident.
Yeah. And then when I wake up, I know my mama's going to come pretty soon. And so they feel good. So one of the weird rituals we have over there is if you get a boo-boo, we say boo-boo. Down here they say bobo.
I always said boo-boo.
Thank you. Every time I say boo-boo, people are like, what? I'm like, we call it a boo-boo in Oklahoma. So you get the little frozen bunny, and then we also get like half of a little ice cream, like the little frozen Kool-Aid, basically.
Oh, mine would have liked that.
So they knew that was the ritual. So even though I got hurt, I'm not that upset about it. They go right in there, and it's the cutest thing on earth that they know that this is what we do here. And that, to me, is key. Because during COVID, you might think, everybody was so cranky. And if you think about it, it's because our routines were messed up.
Yeah.
Because really, you could watch TV more, you could eat more ice cream, but you just didn't feel right.
You were off your routine.
Yeah, and even to adults. And so God is a God of order, the way he did things. And so when people act like that's just religious or something, they're like, no, it's actually the way God planned us. Whether you believe in God or not, there's still,
Structure.
the sun comes up and, our day is made in a certain way. And so I love that. It makes people feel confident and secure. And the happier a child is, the better they feel.
Yes. And we definitely had some who did better with spontaneity than others.
Yeah.
But, we had a lot of routines like that. I had one child who knew that nap time was coming because I would set them down in their crib when they were still in it, and they'd watch me reach for the blinds and turn them, and they would just smile. And I was like, okay, I know this probably won't last forever. But for several months, that was the routine because they were like, oh, it's happening, this thing. I know to expect it.
Right.
And they were happier because of it. And of course, the flip side of that is anytime you try to do something outside of that, like travel or visit relatives, then they're not really getting anyone's best side.
Yeah. It's like,
they like it like they like it.
they're like, this is not what we do.
Right. So pros and cons, but it worked for us.
But yeah, I actually think it works for everybody. It's a good thing. So the next question I have for you is, what things do you do consistently raising your children? And I know it's routines, but are there any other things that you did?
I think back on their school age days, particularly because, as you know, as they get a lot older and they're in college and career now, some of the routine has gone out the window. But especially when they were young, we always tried to pray with them and recite scripture with them first thing in the morning. So when they were in private school, whoever was taking them to school in the morning would have verses that they would all recite. We'd pray for the day, put on the full armor. And it got so routine for them that they actually, one time they were getting a ride with a family member, to a sporting event that we were all meeting up at, and they were in the car, and they're like, I feel like we should be praying for the day. And I was like, yes, this is a win.
That's right.
So my relative who had brought them had told me that, and I was like, oh, that just makes my heart happy.
I love it.
That
Yeah.
it was ingrained. So we did that. And, kids are great captives when they're in the car, and you have to take them a lot of places. So we really made that part of the routine of when we would get in the car. And then eating together, we definitely made that one of the things that was not negotiable. We found one year just the kids' sporting events were taking over. The practices got later as they got older. Not much older. They'd be like 11, and they'd have 8:30 at night. And I was like, no, we're pulling the plug on that. So we are probably the reason no one's in the Olympics, but I'm happier for
That's
it.
okay.
We ate dinner together, and I know it works for some people, but we could not be
Yeah.
car dinner people. It wasn't
I
for me.
know. That would make my stomach hurt.
Yeah, it wasn't for me. So we just tried every night to sit down and talk about their day. We did this thing sometimes called high-low, where everybody would go around the table and talk about like what was a high from the day or what was a low from the day.
That's good.
It was just kind of a quick way. Obviously, we could connect with each of them individually too, but for them to all be a little bit a part of each other's world of what the high-low had been. So those are the two things I think we did.
Well, and just think about it.
Daily.
Those are two things you do for the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
so we always make everything so complicated and so big and all these things, but you need to be able to talk to Jesus
Right.
the rest of your life.
Right.
So I think I said that Sunday, we have to teach our children how to pray. And it'll make them feel good. It's a proven fact that when people pray, anxiety goes down. And this is not even like a Christian study. This is scientifically that they calm down. And so with everything that goes on, it's really beautiful to teach your children. We can talk to God, the creator of the universe. And even before they can understand it, they'll feel good about it. So praying and then eating together, you can do those till you see Jesus.
Right. That was the goal.
Yeah.
Hopefully they still want to eat with us
Yes, and
for a
so
long time.
just to know that you need to sit down and take time, and all the things that we want to do and accomplish, that those two things are a constant. I used to say that I wanted my children to do two things, and it was to learn an instrument and learn a language. Now they all learned an instrument; they didn't all learn a language. They took French and Spanish and all those things, but we're good at none of it.
A little bit of everything.
But the reason why I wanted them to do that, because I felt like they were lifetime.
Yes. Yep.
And I felt like, basketball, you can't do your
It's
whole
so
life.
temporary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you waste your entire youthful years trying to do something that you're not going to carry out your whole life.
Right. I mean, I wanted them to learn how to be a part of a team, and I
Yeah.
wanted them to have sporting abilities, and we definitely always were active. They were all part of various sports. They did swim team all the way through. The girls did dance. I mean, they all took some form of activity always, but it wasn't like we weren't heading for the NBA.
No.
I'd rather sacrifice a little bit of that and have more family time.
Because it definitely has benefits.
Yes.
Playing games, we would get snowed in. We would just play even board games and things like that.
A lot of that.
And it's good benefits because you see who needs to work on self-control and
Who's
who,
not such a good loser?
yeah, who, and maybe just all kinds of
Who's
things.
not such a good winner?
Yes, all kinds of things you learn from playing games. So all of those things have benefits, but there are only certain things that are carried out through your whole life. And we, like you all, we wanted to focus on those kind of things to have not just a happy child, but to have a happy life.
Right.
And I feel like it's only built on the principles of God. And so you kept saying you did this or that. One of the things I talk about motherhood, and this is a very known scripture, but I love it so much. And it's Proverbs 22, verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Prayer,
Yep.
eating with the people you love, winning well, losing well, laughing hard, all of those things. But the word training to me is so intentional.
Yeah.
So like when we get ready to train for something, you set aside a time and you're determined to do this at that time, and you're determined to do it daily.
Mm-hmm.
And there was these shirts that are here in town, and not to badmouth them, I don't even know who made them, but they say, Mama tried.
Oh no. You hope the mamas don't see them wearing it.
And all I'm thinking is, then Mama should have trained.
Right.
Because there's a big difference between, I tried to clean the house and didn't do it. But you know what I mean? So it's like there's such a huge difference. So the Bible doesn't say try to train up a child. It says train up a child.
Right.
And train up a child. And so God's standards are always higher than us. That's why it's just up. And the society right now, the standards are so low that we're also comfortable.
Yeah, there's actually, the kids and I have had a lot of conversations about how there's not much focus anymore. Nobody really talks about holiness or sin. Like, it's very unpopular. It's definitely not a cool topic. But I just don't really see the point in not having something to reach for. It's obvious that we're never going to be holy, especially, I mean, on our own. But even with Jesus, we're still just human. But to just take away the standard completely and say, why have anything to reach for, you know,
No.
I'd much rather it be something that we're constantly trying to attain.
That's
Have a
right.
goal.
Because you go when there's something better. I mean, you're from a place that loves the Queen,
Yes.
and I was not from a place that loves the Queen, but I love the Queen.
Have that in common.
I always tell people, I was raised in a city that there's now like 800 or 900. It's not even 1,000 anymore.
Oh,
I,
population decrease.
there were more cows than there were people. I promise you. Well, it started with, Princess Di and all this, but I loved the Queen so much. But what it was, it made me think people can live like this.
Right.
And it gave me a standard that I wanted to achieve. Obviously, I'm not in a castle and I don't have people waiting on me and bring those little short
Bread
those,
cookies.
oh my goodness, I would love to have tea with those.
Should have brought you some.
I would love that. So, but I think it always helped me not just give up,
Right.
Right. And so God, that's what God's word does for you if you keep a right heart. Now, if your heart's wrong, you're like, that's no fair. They had that. I can never do that. I messed up. That's not the right heart. The heart to be like, I want to do that.
Right.
Is the heart that we should have. And so when you see someone doing something well, don't get offended. Think, I want to do that. I'm going to get in that line. Joyce Meyer said that years ago. When she saw someone being successful in any area of their life, she was like, I want to get in that line.
Yeah.
Because, Jesus has more than enough for all of us. And so that's what I did. So I hope if you're listening to this today, you don't go, well, my kids are already a hot mess. No, just get in that line.
It's never too late.
It's never too late.
Yeah, I love getting advice from people who are, like you said, who are doing well. And particularly just a little bit ahead of us.
Yeah.
And just try to figure out, hey, what worked for you in this season? Because particularly when they were younger, and they were all so different. I didn't have any ideas really on what I needed to be doing. I mean, I read the Bible, but it doesn't specifically say, what do you do? And that one takes the toy from that one and then bangs them on the head with it. Like, it's not very clear.
You're like, where's the scripture?
I need a little bit more specific.
I know Cain and Abel didn't work it out right, so we're not going to do that.
We got to come up with something.
And to be truthful, you're probably like me in the middle of it when they're all toddlers and elementary and even just middle school. You're not even sure you're doing it right.
No, I don't know if anybody feels like they're doing it right.
No.
We had 3 kids in 4 years, and I mean, we joke about whose childhood do we really remember the best, and it's definitely the oldest. But I mean, they all had memorable moments, but it is a little bit of a blur when you've got 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
It is a blur, and there's a big question: am I doing it right?
Right, and you know what your goal is, but you want to know, is this the road that I'm taking? Is it going to lead to my destination that we're hoping for?
Yeah.
And we definitely made a lot of course corrections along the way when we saw that maybe it wasn't going quite the direction we wanted it to.
Yep.
We adjusted.
We did too, and so but you just have to keep trusting God's word.
Yep.
Because it does work out every little bit. The Holy Spirit's very clear, like this isn't the way, scoot it, get really lined up. Yeah.
Right.
But if you trust his way, it does work. And I think that's what the whole imperfect family thing is talking about. You're never going to be perfect, but to be exceptional.
Right.
Happy, y'all still love each other. I mean, that's what you really want. Okay, so did you enjoy raising your children?
Yes. I actually really wanted to hit the fast forward button on that season when I was working, because Scott and I had agreed that maybe we would save money for a few years and travel and do some things. And about a year into my job, I was like, this is terrible. Let's just have kids. He's like, you can find another job. We don't need to do that just yet. But I was just ready for that next adventure. So definitely when they were young, there were days that I was like, I'm not sure, Jesus, why you thought it would be great that they could all be born in 3.5 years. But I knew we had a plan for that. And I really did love it. I loved watching their sibling relationships develop. I loved having what I thought would be the hardest part was having everybody kind of all in the same season at once.
Yeah.
That turned out to be one of my favorite parts.
Right.
It makes it a lot easier to pick
Right.
a board game or a movie or a vacation destination. Everybody's kind of in that same
It is.
mix.
It's a good thing.
So I really did love it. And
Yeah.
there was just a natural shift when they all went to college and moved into their careers. And even though we're still close-knit and living as a family, it definitely changed. I don't know that you're ever really done parenting, but definitely done with that training season.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I kind of missed it when it started to sail in the other direction. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You think it's going to last forever, but it did not. But it was a lot of fun.
It's like I always try to tell my kids, each phase you go through in life, it's like you get like I don't know how, I mean, the Bible says you can live 80 some, 70 some, 80 years, whatever now. So say that is 8 clumps of ice cream, like scoops of ice cream. So if you just get mad and cry during one of them, you missed it. It's gone. It's gone. You missed it. So slow down and enjoy it. And you said something about training. I have always looked at, I always tell people you train kids in 6 years, like the first 6 years, and then 6 to 12, then 12 to 18. So the first 6 year is training.
Right.
You know, we don't slap our brothers. We don't throw our food.
Right.
We don't pee-pee in our pants. So,
All the fun
you know,
things.
all of those things. You don't wipe your nose with your sleeve.
Right.
So many training things. We don't say hateful things. And then by 6, they should know. From 1 to 6, they should know we don't slap our brothers or sisters or whoever it is. But then from 6 to 12, you should be correcting. Like, remember, we don't do that. It should be clear, and then there should be some corrections with some consequences.
Yep.
You know, because they know. And then 12 to 18 is coaching. Like, hey, now you know, get out there and try again. You know better. So I'd always stopped at those 3 things. Well, now that my kids are above 18,
Now what?
counseling.
Uh,
Counseling.
a lot of that.
It is
Yep.
forever
It goes with that
counseling.
season.
So I don't know if you ever stop. You just
No.
have to counsel because they even then they're adults
Right.
and they're like, hey, I'm trying this thing you said would work. It'll work. Just keep
Right.
working it, you know. And so there's lots of those pep talks and counseling moments. So I don't think parenting ever gets over.
No, and I consider it just a huge privilege. Each season that we've gone through with them, a lot of people kind of disparage the teenage years, but I can tell you, we never laughed harder. Like, whether
great.
intentionally or unintentionally, there was
Yes.
a lot going on in that season
So
to laugh about.
Fun.
And it was so fun
It
and very
was.
fast paced. And I think we all kind of got to the end of it like a roller coaster where you're just like, what just happened?
I
But it
know.
was so fun. And
So
now that they're
fun.
all in their 20s, which feels really strange because when our oldest turned 13, I was like, we're going to be in this for a minute.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to be doing this teen thing for a minute. And then it was over.
It's a flash.
And now I just really feel like it's a privilege that they want to talk about what's going on
Yeah.
and they want to still have that counsel and that conversation.
Right.
And I'm really grateful because I feel like it just makes all of our relationships richer. And even though sometimes, like you said, it can be late at night,
Yeah.
that's when they're processing life.
Yep.
I'm grateful they still want to process life
Right.
with us. So
Right. And so we're a little bit ahead of y'all. So here's what we've faced lately. Late at night, when you said late at night, this came to my mind. Once one of our twins came in late at night and said, we're going to go to Las Vegas and get married, me and my girlfriend. And we're like, why would you talk about that at midnight when I'm
No,
so
all good
tired?
ideas happen at midnight.
When I'm so tired and I'm like, no, you don't want to do that. She wants to wait. No, Mom, did you realize you can get married in Las Vegas for $40? I'm like, yes, but you can do a lot of things for $40. It's not good. So thank goodness I was awake enough to make it through that one, but it's been fun.
It's encouraging to me that other people are putting forth really great ideas after midnight because we have a lot of them in our house.
You're like, seriously?
I think after you cross 20, all the good ideas happen at midnight.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, my boys would come in, and one of them actually has a motorcycle right now. I'd just be cooking, trying to mind my own business, and they'd come in, I'm buying a motorcycle. I'm like, you know, it doesn't take a lot to fire me up. I'm like,
Right.
no, you're not. You're not buying a motorcycle. You're not going to run around. There's rain in the seat. So John would pull me in the dining room like, they don't have any money.
Right.
They can't buy
Reality
them.
check.
Quit. They're baiting you.
Right.
They want to fight with you. And so I'm like, oh, okay, that's true. They don't even have money to buy a motorcycle. But although when they did, they bought one.
Oh no,
So
I'm
see,
not thinking ahead that
no,
far.
no, no, no.
I hang on to that motorcycle story Sundays because
Yeah.
I'm just like, I was right. He's not buying a motorcycle. It's gonna be okay because we're
Oh,
not there yet.
he's already ready to sell it, so he had to just get it out of the system.
Right?
He's
Okay, good.
already ready. Okay, this one might be a little too. I don't know. You can share it with me if you want. What form of discipline did you use, and did it change with the different ages?
Well, I did ask my kids about this question if it came up, how they wanted me to
Right.
answer it.
I know.
They
Yeah.
said, "Well, you can tell them that we definitely were spanked in our
Yeah.
childhood." And I was like, "I don't know, can I say that on a podcast? But if I can't, you can take it out." But they were definitely spanked. And what we did learn early on, I don't really like the word currency because I feel like it denotes like you're paying for good behavior. But one of the things we figured out early on is that we had to ask the Lord what the best way was for each child. And so even though we did approach everything from that biblical standard of not sparing the rod and not wanting to spoil the child, we definitely found that certain ones did not respond. Like they were either
Right.
too stoic or just didn't care or just like it wasn't it was a blip on their radar and we were like, all right, how are we going to actually reach them to turn their hearts? And so we felt like the Lord gave us wisdom in these areas really because I reached out to a friend who was older and was like, what are we doing?
Right.
And she's like, oh, we have to pray about it because each of our kids is so different. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, that seems fairly straightforward. Why didn't I think of that? But he showed us different things for each one. And sometimes that was a reward for a good behavior. And sometimes it was a consequence for negative behavior.
Right.
And it really varied with each one. But
Right.
there were all kinds of things. I mean, we definitely had everything as obscure as having to take books away from the one who would read at 1 in
Right.
the morning because they had to get up for school the next
Right.
day, which totally broke my heart because I'm like, how do you take books away from her? Like,
We
this
had one
feels
of
like a
those.
parenting fail. But in that season, it was what was necessary. And it was an obedience thing too. Like our kids
Right.
knew that the rules were there for their benefit. And if they weren't going to follow them, then we were
Right.
going to have to make them see it until they could actually see it was for their benefit. So there were things like that. There were timeouts. There were people just needing a minute to cool off
Right.
before we could have a conversation about it. But it wasn't ever a cut and dried thing.
Right.
It just, each kid needed something different.
Right.
And that did actually produce conversations later. Well, why was it different? You know, like, well, we promised to be consistent, but we didn't say that you're all going to be
Right.
handled like clones because you're not. God made you uniquely. So.
Right. And people do think, sometimes they think that discipline means punishment, and discipline is a teaching. And so, when you are given consequences or rewards or even just a talk to, that is a form of discipline.
Right.
Like a lot of times we would just be like, this is not how we act.
Right.
Now, you really can't do that to a 2 and 3 year olds. That's where the little wooden spoon came
Right.
in.
Yep.
And there was just nothing like a little bitty pat that it just hurt their feelings
A
and
reminder.
their little leg. So it just is, it is what it is. But a lot of talks, a lot of boundaries. When you said reading books is a good thing, so you felt bad. But, to be truthful, some people overwork out.
Right.
And working out is a good thing. And even sometimes, like if you're a runner, you have to rest your feet.
Right.
And so people having boundaries, I think discipline is just showing people that there are boundaries and there are great things if you stay within the boundaries. There's great blessings, but there's also a lot of pain if you go outside, outside of it. So I think discipline is something we have to follow the Holy Spirit, and it isn't just a spanking all the time. And
Yeah.
and not just a no all the time. Sometimes it's like a yes, but not now.
Right. And we found too, like they started to get more in touch with the natural consequences of it too. As they got older, they would see if I do this, I don't really feel that good the next day.
Yeah.
Or if I eat this extra thing I'm not supposed to have right now, then I'm not going to feel good either. And it actually became a little bit easier to just let some of those natural consequences play out and then have a conversation.
Yeah.
Which we didn't do that all the time, just depending on what it was. But they'll tell you that I fought pretty hard. The hill that I picked to die on, they always say pick your battles. My hill was sibling relationships.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
nobody got in bigger trouble than if they were
Yep.
hurting someone's feelings or beating up on a sibling or
Uh-huh.
that was the no-fly zone. There was no quarter given there. And I'm really glad I did now because they were so close in age that sometimes it would have been easy to slide into that culture, that mindset of, oh, that's just expected and they're just going to bicker. And maybe that is how it's going to be if you don't just constantly pull them out. And there were days I was super tired and just thought, I'm just going to let them work it out. It'll help their problem solving skills. And for a little bit, that's okay. But at the end of the day, everyone's got to actually make it right.
And you
So,
have to teach people
yes.
how to treat each other.
We did, and
Yeah.
we had to model it, and it was kind of humbling in a lot of ways because in our household the saying always was, we're going to treat each other with kindness and respect.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the motto. But it calls you to that standard as well. So when you're feeling a little bit tired and you want to have a tantrum, it's like, well, that's not very kind or respectful.
Right.
And there were definitely times that you don't meet the mark. But that was the discipling side of it, where we just really wanted to make sure that they knew how to treat people. But specifically, that starts at home.
And the biggest area that people struggle with nowadays is not knowing how to treat other people. And that's the most painful thing that people have to deal with when they're in a hurtful relationship. And they can make excuses, but they simply haven't been trained. And so you said you taught them to pray, taught them to eat together, taught them how to treat people. And so that's a lifetime. That would lead someone through a lifetime of peace and happiness. And the thing of it is, you just think, oh, that's all it is. No, those things bring other good things.
Yeah, and that was what we wanted for them. We wanted them to have, we joke about home training, but we wanted them to have life skills because we used to always tell them that they're so close in age that this was a training ground for them. And that if they couldn't get it right with their siblings, that they were going to have to expect that there would be challenges, whether it's with their roommate or a coworker or a spouse one day in their friendships. Like these things are applicable universally. They're not just because mom said. They're because you do need to figure out how to treat people respectfully. And that doesn't always mean agreement. I mean, we still even talk now with them, especially as they're much older and leaning into their own thoughts and opinions on things. Like, it's perfectly respectful to say I disagree and to have a conversation about it. But it's not okay to, like you said, no walkouts on Sunday.
No walkouts. Get back in here. We're not walking
No
out.
walkouts.
We're not walking out. But be kind even in that process. So we've almost kind of covered it, but my last question, because I know that I think a lot about this now. What was the legacy that you wanted to leave with your children?
Well, I told them when they were old enough to really wrap their mind around the idea that we were not immortal, that my goal was for them to be able to take everything to the Lord. Because I was really happy to help them problem solve now, but that ultimately my goal was to point them to Jesus because I wasn't always going to be here. And when I'm not, I need to know that they have the problem solving skills to take it to the Lord. And something we say a lot in our household is, I just need you to listen to the Lord and do what he says. I can't have another expectation of you, particularly now they're all adults. But I'm going to trust that you're going to listen to the Lord and do what he says. But that starts early on with trying to help them cultivate that personal relationship so that they do feel like now as grown-ups they can take their problems to the Lord. And yes, of course, I want them to come and ask me for my opinion too, and I'd love to give them, wise advice or cry with them or laugh with them, but I'm not always going to be able to do that. And the other thing we told them with the sibling relationships was, we're not always going to be here and you're going to need each other. You're stronger together. So you need to be a posse and a band of, the three, and you always have each other's backs. No questions asked. Someone will come and pick you up from wherever it is and take out the person who was upsetting you.
Make it happen.
That's right. They're going to always have each other's backs. So that's what I really wanted the legacy to be, is that they're all stronger together, but that they all need to go to the Lord and ask for his opinion before considering what to do. Because I'd love to think that they're always going to ask me what to do, but that's so already not the case.
They're going to, and it is good when they can start figuring it out in a community.
Well, it's a bit of a relief too. It's like, okay, this is not all on me. And as they get older, it's, as a parent, you always feel like it's so silly, but they could be behaving in a certain way in public, and you're like, oh, that's a reflection on me as a parent. And I'm like, no, kids are just kids.
They're just
sometimes.
kids. Oh, yeah.
They either ate too much sugar or didn't get a nap, or something just kind of tweaked them in a way, or someone said something. It's going to happen.
It is going to happen. Just relax. Even if your kids have a meltdown in Walmart, it's okay. We all know. It's just going to happen.
It did happen.
Well, all of those things, people, and think about things. Everybody wants to get things for their children, and really it's the things that aren't things that are most important. Integrity and discipline and enjoyment, talking to the Lord. All of those are what you want to give your children because they last a lifetime and they'll take you through any storm. And relationships are the most important. That's why God gives us siblings. And if you're an only child, God gives you a family where there's a lot of children. I love the fact that God is so smart how he does everything. He set people in families. And we even foster children now, so he sets children in families. But then he sets those families in a larger family called a church.
Yes.
Because your family doesn't have it all figured out.
No.
And so when you come to church, you can look at other people's families and go, I like that about their family. And you can learn from each other. It's like having a really large family that believes in one Father. And so his way really works very beautifully if we would just listen to him, like you said, and do what he said.
Yeah, we make it sound simple, but it's not. It's straightforward, but it's not always easy. And I'm glad that every day that I see one or all three of them doing that, it makes me happy. And I think about how it talks about how there's no greater joy than to see your kids walking in truth. And I just think that is 100% been our experience. Nothing has brought us more joy than that, because ultimately they're fulfilled in that. And on their hard days, or maybe they're kind of struggling with some choices or decisions, it's like, okay, I hurt for that as well.
Right.
And so the converse is also true. But I love to see it when they're leaning into listening to the Lord and doing what he says.
I love it too. Basically, his way works.
Right.
Kelly, thank you so much for
Thanks.
sharing your heart. It was rich and wonderful, and I know it's going to help you guys. So listen, share it with people you know, subscribe, and get out there and get in a church and get around people that are doing it not 100%, but pretty good, and you'll learn from it. This is the point of Sisterhood Speaks, because you spoke up and it'll help others. Thank you for joining us today.